Today's lesson is Vitalik Buterin, creating a more equal world out of the ether. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
And I'm Mike.
Today we're talking about a fella by the name of Vitalik Buterin. And he's originally from Russia. He used to be a game player on an online game, but later he moved to Canada when he was 6 years old. And he's also moved on from gaming, and he's actually become quite active in cryptocurrency.
Okay. Cryptocurrency, one of those things that's really a big thing in the headlines these days for the past couple of years. People have been talking about these sort of online currencies, I guess you could call them, online forms of money. Bitcoin being the most well-known. There are, I think, several hundred of these cryptocurrencies around these days, and some people think they're great because they're kept out of the hands of government control. Other people think it's a little mysterious and possibly a way for people to fund illegal activities like crime using online money that can't be traced by governments. But certainly people like Vitalik Buterin are changing the world. People you might not have heard about, but who are having a big effect on the world today, and in many ways possibly a huge effect on the world tomorrow. So let's learn more about this fellow Vitalik Buterin. He's got an interesting story, and it says he's creating a more equal world out of the ether. It's kind of like out of the air. The ether is that sort of invisible gas that we might consider being around us. And generally, though, in a non-scientific way, when we say someone created something out of the ether, it's like they created out of thin air. They created it just almost as if by magic, using very few resources, but suddenly, there it is.
So let's find out about our featured person for this month, Vitalik Buterin. Let's listen to the first part right now.
Vitalik Buterin, creating a more equal world out of the ether. When Vitalik Buterin was 13, he spent his free time developing his character in the video game World of Warcraft. Having been placed in a program for gifted students after moving from Russia to Canada at the age of 6, he had few real-life friends. He spent much of his social life online. So when the creators of his favorite game released an update that made his character nearly useless, he was devastated. Little did he know that this moment would go on to define his life and lead to the creation of Ethereum, a blockchain platform that supports one of the world's most widely used cryptocurrencies.
各位好，第一部分我们看到单字 devastated， 这个字是形容词，指极度震惊、难过的，或是被彻底摧毁的。例如 Jan was devastated by the news that her favorite author was retiring from writing. Jan 非常震惊，因为她最喜欢的作者要退休了。或是 The people in the village were devastated to learn that their leader had died. 这村庄的人们在得知他们的领袖死后非常难过。另外，将这个字字尾的 d 去掉，就成了动词 devastate， 表示彻底破坏或是摧毁。像是 The country was devastated by a terrible earthquake. 那个国家遭受一个可怕的地震侵袭。也可以说 News of his favorite team's loss devastated James. James 最喜欢的球队输球的消息让他大受打击。
All right, the time has come for us to discuss the first part of today's lesson. Again, our featured person for the month of May is Vitalik Buterin. And again, he's creating a more equal world out of the ether, out of thin air. Now, when Vitalik Buterin was 13, he spent his free time developing his character in the video game World of Warcraft. Okay, so he was 13 years old, and by then he had already immigrated to Canada. And he was kind of a nerd, I suppose. He spent his time in front of the computer, and he spent his free time developing his character in a video game which was called World of Warcraft. I believe my daughter has played this game before, but I don't really play online games. I don't want to get addicted. There are better things to do with my time than sit in front of a computer screen for hours on end. How about you, Mike? Are you a big video game player?
I game occasionally. I could use that as a verb. I game occasionally. But no, I'm not a big online game player. A lot of those games, they really do suck a lot of your time into the game. But for some people, they're great fun. It can be much more than just about, hunting down monsters and collecting treasures and things like that. You can really turn it into a kind of online world. And for some people, as they get into it, they also learn how to kind of make games. You can code and create your own sort of little mini games within games. And I think for some people, like maybe Vitalik Buterin, it's a great way to sort of express their creativity. It says, having been placed in a program for gifted students after moving from Russia to Canada at the age of 6, he had few real-life friends. Oh, okay, sounds like a kind of classic immigrant story. He was new to a new country. He'd moved from Russia to Canada, probably had some problems with the language, problems making friends, problems with the new culture, and maybe one of his other problems was that he was very, very smart. Sometimes for kids like that, it can be kind of hard for them to make good relationships, to connect with other students, but he was very smart. We don't just assume that because he was good at computers. No, he was in a program for gifted students. A program, in this case, would be sort of a special educational environment that was created with special classes, special curriculum, doing things that's more advanced than most of the other kids his age. And we know it's more advanced because he was described as a gifted student. Gifted students are students who are more intelligent, more advanced. They just learn things more quickly. They're more curious. They spend more time studying, possibly, than some of the other students. So often when we think of a situation like this, we think of, kids 15, 16 in high school, but they're studying things that other people would be studying later on in university or something like that. So a very smart kid in a new place, new country, new language, new culture. He had few real-life friends, giving us the idea that in his online life in World of Warcraft, he had lots of friends there, but at school, he was probably sitting alone in the lunchroom by himself without a lot of other buddies and pals and friends.
Well, he probably wasn't the only one. Of course, a lot of young people nowadays are spending lots of time in front of their screens, and they don't really have a lot of real-life friends, but he was gifted, so he was placed in a program for gifted students. Sometimes that kind of program is called an accelerated program, and again, it also tells us that he moved from Russia to Canada when he was 6 years old, and he spent much of his social life online. So when the creators of his favorite game released an update that made his character nearly useless, he was devastated. So, of course, he had invested a lot of his time into this program, and then the creators of the game decided to change things, and this happens all the time with programs. They release an update, which means a newer version of the program or of the software or something like that. Most oftentimes when I get an update on my e-reader here or on my phone, I don't like the update. It's not broke. Don't fix it, okay? But they always fix it anyway, and then you got to learn it again, and you like the old one better. And in this case, he was devastated because, well, they kind of made his character nearly useless. So if you're devastated, that means you're really destroyed emotionally by something. He probably cried a lot because of that.
He was very, very, very disappointed and felt this was really unfair. But there was sort of a hidden benefit to this that might have actually taken a long time for him to realize. It says, little did he know that this moment would go on to define his life and lead to the creation of Ethereum, a blockchain platform that supports one of the world's most widely used cryptocurrencies. So there you go. He wasn't just upset and, kick his computer and say, I'm never playing World of Warcraft again. Those guys broke my heart by ruining my character. No, little did he know. He didn't expect it or didn't realize it, didn't learn it at that time, but it would go on to define his life. This experience of being kind of let down by the creators of a game he loved, it would really define his life. It would really sort of set his life on a very clear path that eventually, obviously over time, led to the creation of Ethereum. Now, the creation of something is basically just when it is made, probably when it was first imagined or first invented or something like that, but we can also talk about creation in a natural sense, how flowers reproduce or seeds, turn into plants and eggs become animals. This is also creation as well, but here we're using it more in a discovery, invention, scientific kind of way.
Okay, and also notice in this sentence we begin with the phrase, little did he know, and that means basically he did not know this was going to happen at the time. We often use this construction when we talk about someone having a big change in their life, but at the time they did not know that was going to happen. So he did not know it then, he had no way of knowing then that that moment would be instrumental in changing his life forever. He would go on to define his life and lead to the creation of Ethereum, which again is a blockchain platform that supports one of the world's most widely used cryptocurrencies. I think Bitcoin is the biggest one, but there are several others, and lots of people swear by investing in those. They think that cryptocurrencies are the wave of the future. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now to the second part. We'll listen to it first.
Having his game character nerfed caused Buterin to lose faith in powerful institutions. And it was around that time that his father, a computer scientist, introduced him to Bitcoin, a form of digital currency secured by a blockchain. Blockchains were a way for currencies to break free from the control of central banks by recording all transactions on a public ledger that can't be edited. Fascinated, Buterin threw himself into researching and writing about Bitcoin, eventually co-founding Bitcoin Magazine, one of the first magazines about digital currencies.
.第二部分我们看到名词 transaction 指交易或是业务，例如 The bank was investigated for its suspicious transactions. 这家银行因为可疑的交易而被调查，或是 I'm trying to transfer money to my wife's account, but the bank is not allowing the transaction. 我正尝试着把钱转进我太太的账户里，但银行不允许这项交易。另外，把这个字字尾的 ion 去掉，就变成了动词 transact， 意思是交易或是办理业务。像是 The startup company only transacts its business online. 那家新创公司只做网络交易。或者 With the wide availability of the internet, many people transact online now. 由于网络的广泛普及，许多人现在都在线上交易了。再来，我们看到单字 fascinate， 这个字是动词，指使着迷或是迷住。例如 Nora majored in Japanese because she is fascinated by Japanese culture. Nora 主修日文是因为她对日本文化着迷。或是 History fascinates Eleanor so much that she often spends holidays touring historical landmarks. Eleanor 对历史相当着迷，所以他假日都会去参观具历史意义的地标。另外补充这个字的名词 fascination， F-A-S-C-I-N-A-T-I-O-N fascination 表示着迷或是迷恋。像是 Timothy has had a fascination with airplanes ever since he was a child. Timothy 从他小时候就对飞机深深着迷。或是 Richard's fascination with mathematics led him to become a math teacher. Richard 对数学的迷恋使他成为一位数学老师。最后我们看到片语 throw oneself into， 指投身于点点点，或是积极从事点点点。例如 If you throw yourself into your studies over the next school year, you will get much better grades. 如果你下学年全心全意读书，你的功课就会好很多。或是 Tom threw himself into his work to keep his mind occupied so that he wouldn't pointlessly worry about his hospitalized friend. Tom 埋首于工作，让自己全心忙碌，这样他就不会无谓的担心住院的朋友了。
Okay, let's continue to talk about the life and times of Vitalik Buterin. And remember, he had some hard times there when his character was kind of made useless. He was devastated by that. And later on, he would use that as a way to move on and become quite successful. That moment defined his life, and it led to the creation of Ethereum, which again is a blockchain platform that has to do with cryptocurrencies. So having his game character nerfed caused Buterin to lose faith in powerful institutions. And it was around that time that his father, a computer scientist, introduced him to Bitcoin, a form of digital currency secured by a blockchain. So, okay, we're talking about having your game character nerfed, and this is a technical term I believe they use in the online gaming community. It means your character has been kind of rendered ineffective. It's no longer as powerful as it was, and I suppose you could use this term in real life, but my understanding is that this is a term that is used mostly in these online platforms, especially when gaming.
Absolutely, yeah. It kind of turns it from something that's powerful and, solid into something like, well, when we think of Nerf, we also think of the toy company that makes toys out of very soft, foamy type things. A Nerf baseball bat will not hurt you if you get hit with it because it's made of foam. It's not tough anymore. So this was really heartbreaking for him, and it actually caused him to lose faith in powerful institutions. When we talk about institutions, we talk about big, solid organizations that people rely on that are part of our culture and society. The medical institution, the educational institution, the government institutions, and financial institutions like all the big banks and things like that. So if you lose faith in these institutions, it's kind of like society or certain big, powerful, and important parts of it have kind of let you down, right? If you got sick with something and every doctor told you it was just your imagination and there's nothing wrong with you, but then eventually you discover that you were sick the whole time, doctors weren't paying attention or listening to you, it might cause you to lose faith in the medical institution, in doctors and, their advice and things like that. But at the same time, he did have a father there, and the father's giving him some guidance, and this father is especially knowledgeable and especially trustworthy as an advisor because he's a computer scientist. And so maybe to cheer up Vitalik or get him to, focus his energy and his attention on something else and not just be upset about his game, he introduced him to Bitcoin, a form of digital currency secured by a blockchain. And a currency, of course, is a form of money. When we talk about currency these days, we're usually talking about US dollars or Japanese yen or things like that. Currency in the past might have been gold coins. And of course, currency in the future could be online cryptocurrencies like Ethereum or like a Bitcoin that are secured by a blockchain. But a currency is basically a form of money that we use to buy and sell things.
Okay, and blockchains were a way for currencies to break free from the control of central banks by recording all transactions on a public ledger that can't be edited. So there you go. That's what blockchains are. Or at least at the time, they were a way for currencies to break free from the control of central banks. So I guess central banks were controlling currencies at the time, and if you have a blockchain, then your cryptocurrency or your digital currency can break free from that control, and then you can be freely traded on the open market. And of course, a transaction, of course, is when somebody buys something and somebody else pays them for that, or there's an exchange of money for products and services. Each time that happens is a transaction, and a public ledger is like a public record. In companies, of course, they keep ledgers, they keep accounting, or they keep account records in a ledger so that there's records there if they need to consult those records for future reference.
So this was all something quite new for Vitalik. He was still a fairly young man, and his father had introduced him to blockchains and cryptocurrencies and things like that. And it seems to have really got his attention, really gotten his son Vitalik's attention, because we read he was fascinated. Buterin, this is the son, of course, threw himself into researching and writing about Bitcoin, eventually co-founding Bitcoin Magazine, one of the first magazines about digital currencies. So he really really got into this. When you're fascinated by something, you find it extremely interesting. Not just a little interesting, but it kind of takes over your mind and your imagination. You read as much as you can. You learn as much as you can. You do research about something because it's just quite amazing how much you really like it and you're really curious and interested in it. So he threw himself into researching and writing, which is something you would do when you're fascinated. When you throw yourself into something, well, you could throw yourself into a swimming pool on a hot day, or throw yourself onto the sofa at the end of a long day when you want to lie down and relax. But in this case, we're kind of talking about really committing your life, committing your energy, committing your free time, really getting into something with all of your passion and your attention and all that stuff. So if something really comes along and you just go, I love this, I want to do this forever, I want to learn more, you're going to throw yourself into it. So much so that he ended up starting a magazine with someone else. He co-founded a magazine. When you found something, you sort of begin something or start it. When we see those two letters CO in front of something like cooperate, we think about someone doing it with another person. It was a team doing it, a team of at least two. So he did this with someone else. He founded or started this Bitcoin magazine. Back in the day, one of the first magazines about digital currencies. So long before most of us had even heard the name blockchain or Bitcoin, this young man had a magazine about it already.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. It's time now to listen to our teacher, Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第一部分的最后一句写道， Little did he know that this moment would go on to define his life and lead to the creation of Ethereum。 他根本不知道这一刻将决定他的人生，并促成以太坊的创建。那这个句子呢，它是用否定副词 little 当作句首的倒装句。我们来学这样的用法。当否定副词或者是否定副词片语摆在句首的时候呢，必须将助动词或 be 动词移到主词前面来进行倒装，那就会形成否定副词或否定副词片语加助动词加主词加动词，或者是否定副词或否定副词片语加 be 动词加主词这样的结构。那这个用法常常用来加强语气。那我们常常会摆在句首的否定副词或是否定副词片语有 little 就是很少几乎没有， nowhere 任何地方都不怎么样， seldom 或是 rarely 就是很少， hardly barely 或是 scarcely 就是几乎不怎么样， never 从不， by no means 绝不， not for a moment 从未有一刻怎么样， no longer 不在， under no circumstances 无论任何情况都不怎么样。这听起来都是带有否定意思的字词哦。好，那举例来说，我们原本的例句是 They were barely able to make ends meet，他们几乎无法维持生计。那如果把这个带有否定意思的副词 barely 移到句首，这时候就要把 be 动词 were 移到主词 they 的前面，形成倒装 barely were they able to make ends meet。 我们回头来看课文句子，如果它不倒装，那原本可以写作 He knew little that this moment would 点点点。现在把 little 移到句首之后，可是句子里面没有助动词啊，那我们就必须根据主词 he 还有动词 knew 它的时态是过去式，所以就要自动补上适当的助动词 did 去形成倒装，于是就变成 Little did he know that this moment would 点点点。有没有看到加了 did 之后 knew 就变成原形 know。 好，再来我们看哦，文中它用到片语动词 go on， 它是表达继续接着做。我们来整理相关的用法。第一种呢，你可以用 go on 加上 to 加原形动词，或者是用 go on to 加上名词，去表达说做完某件事之后继续接着去做下一件事。像课文它就是用 go on to 加原形动词的结构哦。那我们来造个例句。After she finished the first book, Emma went on to read the next one. Emma 在看完第一本书之后，又继续接着看下一本。好，那么第二个用法是我们用 go on 加上动词 ing， 或者是你可以用 go on with 加上名词去表达继续做已经在进行的事情了。好，那我们来看两个例句哦。Ian glanced at his watch and went on talking. Ian 看了一下手表，又继续讲话，所以他本来在讲话，然后看一下手表，又继续讲。好，再来 The speaker paused for a moment and then went on with her speech. 那位演讲者暂停一下，接着继续演讲。好，那么以上是今天重点整理，来回顾今天的单字吧。
Gifted. Gloria is a gifted singer, but she needs to develop her piano skills. Update. Are you sure that you've installed the latest update? Creation. Approving this plan will lead to the creation of thousands of jobs. Institution. Many people have lost faith in financial institutions in recent years. Currency. If you need that particular foreign currency, you'll have to visit a different branch. Transaction. Please provide us with a record of your recent banking transactions. Fascinate. I'm fascinated by the philosophy of Jean-Paul Sartre.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Mike.
I am Roger. See you next time.